Zenobia, hello. You've made it.
You. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I'm sorry. I'm new to Discord. This is actually my first time being on Discord. So I actually opened this account just to talk to you.
Oh, shit. Well, hello. You're doing great so far. Your mic sounds fine. Hit me up, comrade. What do you got on your mind?
Okay, so I actually wanted to talk about pornography since you made a video about pornography recently. Um, And I've been studying the harms and effects on society of pornography for the last year or so. And I'm actually a radical feminist. I'm left leaning, but I'm a radical feminist. I know that you don't like
So,
radical feminists.
so when you say radical feminist, would that be something I would refer to as a trans exclusionary radical feminist?
No, I do believe in trans people, and I do believe that gender can exist on a spectrum.
What element of radical feminism is it? Sex worker exclusionary radical feminism?
Yes,
All
I do
right.
not.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah. Yes. So, first of all, I want to say that pornography, the word itself actually comes from the Greek word porn, which means porno. I'm sorry. It means prostitute. And pornography, graphia, means actually the depiction of. So, pornography is literally the depiction of prostitutes fucking. So, we've been watching the prostitute type of sex, which means that paid labor, those women are not enjoying themselves, they're just doing labor because they are in a economically what do you say vulnerable position to the men who are buying sex from them. So I disagree with that. And pornography is also, in a patriarchal society, when you're going to make porn, that porn is likely to turn out very, violent and sexist. And we see all these trends in pornography today, I believe. And if you've ever been to Pornhub or 4chan GIF board or anything like that, you've seen all those throat fucking and misogynistic porn. you know
Yeah. So let's go over this one at a time, because I'm sure there are some things we'll find we'll agree on, and some things we'll find we'll probably disagree on. Um, so you said earlier that
yes.
that prostitutes or anyone who works in the sex industry, I suppose, is they're selling their labor. They don't like doing it. I think that would be a fair characterization of essentially everyone who works, though. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, there is one thing though. When you're women, there are certain things that you can do if you're economically vulnerable to make money, and prostitution is one of those things. And today we are being marketed that prostitution is actually a very, it's a choice, and people are making the choice to be prostitutes, and they are enjoying it. They call it sex work, but actually that's a very like it's like 3% of all the sex workers on earth. Actually human trafficking is very involved in pornography, and in South American countries, and they specifically like find girls that are barely legal, like 18. And what's the difference between a 17-year-old and 18-year-old? If you ask me, they're not very mature. An 18-year-old is not going to be any more mature than a 17-year-old. So what's up with this? When you turn 18-year-old, you're not suddenly being matured. So that's very illogical to me.
Well, I mean, you'll find I won't disagree that sex trafficking is bad, but sex trafficking is illegal, and for that reason, any legal changes made to our system as it stands won't really affect them. We're already giving money towards fighting sex trafficking, though the amount we've dedicated towards fighting sex trafficking has gone down significantly in the Trump administration.
Yes.
I don't quite agree with that change, but in regards to consensual sex workers, of which let's be fair, there are quite many. Maybe not so
In
many.
America, in Canada, yes, maybe. In Europe, maybe. But
Yes.
in Cambodia, if you've ever seen a documentary or read anything about Cambodia or any southeastern, Asian country, the underage girls are being trafficked, because they have no other choice. Actually, they economically cannot sustain themselves, and they have to do, prostitution in order to feed their families and shit. So
Yeah, but I don't disagree with any of that. I mean, I would never defend like sex trafficking or prostitution in like a
oh, that's
underdeveloped
good.
country. It's one of the reasons why I say like sex tourism isn't just bad because it's prostitution. It's because in all likelihood, if you're going to Cambodia to find a prostitute, they were probably roped into it at 13, or worse, or are 13, depending on what exactly you're looking for. But I'm not defending any of that. Or the topic I imagined was pornography. And
Yes.
I think it's possible to make sort of broader prescriptive judgments that apply to us more developed countries and a different set for countries that have more serious issues with trafficking or a greater percentage of sex workers who are a product of trafficking, you know?
Yes. First of all, I want to say that, I became a feminist for the women who cannot speak up for themselves. I don't really care for Western, I don't care for the women. That's wrong. I shouldn't have said that. What I mean is, in Western societies, usually women are much better off than in like third world countries and shit. So
Hmm.
I usually I know that there are many problems in Western societies that we have to deal with, and I do deal with daily. But in when it comes to pornography and when it comes to sex trafficking and human trafficking, I think you know other countries are, they come before Western countries. Like you in the US, usually, you know, since this is my first time, I'm actually really nervous. I'm sorry about that. I
No need to worry,
literally
comrade.
cannot. Okay, I literally cannot, make my mind about what I'm going to talk about.
The
But
well, the broader issue that I have though is I'm going to agree with almost anything you have to say about fighting against sex trafficking. Human trafficking in general, not just sex trafficking, is I think at this point in time more profitable and more widespread than it ever has been throughout all of human history. This is like a cataclysmic social disaster that needs to be dealt with. But when I think about pornography and defending pornography, I'm not just thinking about defending pornography which was produced by sex workers who were trafficked in from Romania
yes.
so they could be throat fucked at 18. I'm thinking about consensual pornography, amateur pornography with consensual
Okay, let's
actors.
talk about that. Okay, I'm gonna take a deep breath and I'm gonna try to, make out my mind. So, okay, first of all, the what do you say? The moral, not moral. What's the word? Okay, the problem with pornography is that, it defends the. I'm sorry, I forget words.
You don't need to worry, comrade.
Okay, I feel like I'm stealing your time, and
You're not stealing my time. I've spoken to a ton of people. I have no predilections against people who are unaccustomed to public speaking.
okay, okay, I'm glad. So, in pornography, what is being marketed to people is that men should be in the dominant position and women should be subordinate. And almost in every single porn, men come on the woman's face, and there's anal and other things that are usually not very not women don't even have G spots, so I don't understand why any woman would like that, but that's my personal opinion. So there are things that are being promoted to women at a very young age. Pornography, but not only 18-year-olds and older watch pornography. Actually, like my boyfriend, for example, he started watching pornography at the age of 4, and it shaped his sexuality to a very large extent. And I'm I started watching pornography at the age of 15 or 14, and it has impacted me very, very much. And pornography is important because it is almost never talked about. It is like a another compartment of our society that we can just jerk off and move on, but that's not the case. Actually, when you watch porn, the things you see actually, they are still in your mind. You can't just throw them away, and you will start seeing women as sexual objects that need to be fucked in their mouths, or
All right.
slapped or whatever.
So I
Okay,
want
I
to
do.
I want to
Yes.
pull back really quickly so we can sort
Okay.
of break this apart piece by piece. Because, like I said, there are plenty of things I'm going to agree with you on. I'm not exactly a fan of sex trafficking or pedophilia or whatever, or misogyny.
Okay.
But I am a fan of a lot of other things like anal. So we need to pull back a little bit and sort of suss out where exactly the line of disagreement is. So let's talk about what we find acceptable. So let's just imagine a very singular incident. Do you have anything wrong? Do you think there's something immoral with, say, for example, a woman 23 years old, graduated from college, working a job, wants to make a little bit of extra dollars, goes on OnlyCams and finger blasts both her holes to the donations of an audience? Just her choice. She makes enough to live. Doing whatever work it is she does, she just wants a little extra more. Do you have anything against that?
Uh, First of all, this is not a personal issue. Anyone can do whatever they want, and I don't want to ban anything. But the problem with pornography is that it is, viewed by so many people, and it shapes the culture. Actually, it is misogyny in our day, and a misogyny that we cannot fight because it is said that it is kink, and so we have no right to say anything against it. And it is that women can do whatever she wants, but I'm sure that the mindset she's in is caused by watching pornography at an early age. And probably, even if she didn't watch pornography, it is from the romantic movies or whatever that she got herself into this, that she believes that she needs to objectify herself for
Oh,
men's
whoa,
pleasure.
whoa,
And
whoa, whoa. Okay. So this is what I said earlier. I don't consider sex work, assume it's entered into consensually, as much as you can enter into work consensually in a capitalist society, to be any different from any other kind of labor. So
mhm.
I don't think there's any difference between a woman taking up camgirling as a side job and a woman taking up Uber driving as a side job, with the exception that camgirling will probably be more profitable in the long run and will require less initial investment. So if you're talking about how you feel as though she wouldn't have gone ahead and done those things without the influence of patriarchal society and what have you, I don't necessarily know if I agree with that. Even if a person hasn't really had a particularly sexualized upbringing, even if they had a pretty egalitarian household, the allure of easy money for stripping down and gaping yourself to an audience, I don't think that's necessarily that hard to understand. And I don't think it necessarily entails self objectification either. I mean, I stream, that's literally my job. I do things sometimes that I don't want to do to put on a presentation so people will compensate me for it. I don't think there's anything really different between what I do and what a sex worker does.
So what I want to mention is that she's doing, she might have been raised in an egalitarian household, but she has been nevertheless bombarded by images of naked women to sell products. That's the culture she grew up in, and she saw those women and thought to herself that this is the only way to be validated as a woman.
I don't, but
um
wait, you're assuming that though. She just wants money. That's the example that I've posed to you.
yeah, but
And we're all a
why?
product of the society in which we lived. You could say that about every woman and every decision every woman makes.
Yes, I could say that, and I do say that actually.
Well, then you would agree then that agency is compromised in every respect for everything women do because of the society in which they live. We're going the Dworkin argument.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, well, I agree with that. I don't disagree with that at all. But if it's ubiquitous, I don't think it can be specifically levied against sex work. You could also say then that any woman's decision to consensually have sex with a man outside of a commercial sense is also a product of complicit social circumstances, or
Oh,
that their
it
decision to.
definitely is.
Right, well,
Yes.
in that case, the ubiquity of the accusation isn't applicable only to sex workers.
Of course, it's actually a problem, that doesn't just involve pornography or sex workers. It is a problem that many women have to, get over by experiencing some very nasty things, and they have to experience that because they've been, they've grown up in an environment that tells them that they have to somehow, gratify men with their bodies or with their service, and
Well, sure,
you can't
and
just
men
you can't
likewise, and men are
escape from that.
taught they have to be the breadwinners, and men are taught they have to be performatively angry and confident so they can appeal to women. Yeah, we're all subject to the environmental pressures to which we are
Yes,
born.
yes,
But
exactly.
again, that would apply to everything we do, not just to sex work.
And
And you
it
didn't.
does apply to everything we do, I
Then it's
think.
not an argument against sex work; it's just an argument against the patriarchy.
Yes, but sex work in itself is a very big problem, I think.
Well, sure, yeah, but not for this reason, because this applies to every other conceivable sort of decision one could make within a patriarchal society.
Yes, but the idea that sex work is just extra money or or something like that, this is just contributing to the patriarchal values of our society, don't you think?
I don't think there's anything inherently patriarchal about women getting naked on cam. I mean, I want men to get naked on cam too. I'm interested in both groups. Do you think there's something
Yeah,
intrinsically
but
wrong
that
with a
doesn't
man camming?
happen as often as women, does it?
Well, no, not at all, because we expect that women are the arbiters of beauty and sexuality. But that's not intrinsic. That's just an argument against the patriarchy.
Yes, well, so let's think about the history of, camgirling. How did we come to this point? So, first of all, we had, I forgot the name of it, but in ancient Greece, I think, we had a full class of women who were, being public, sex slaves,
Hmm.
as I've read. And, it started from there, I think. And after that, so they were the original prostitutes. And, a class of women has been created from that point on. And the class persisted, in every culture we can see women being traded
But
for their
I'm not
sexualities.
pro patriarchy though. I'm only asking about people consensually engaging in sex work. If you argue
Yes.
that consent can't exist with regards to sex work, I mean, your argument is that consent can't exist with regards to any socially weighted decision. But that's not an argument against the sex work. That's an argument against women's agency in a patriarchal society.
Well, women's agency in a patriarchal society is already compromised. But what I'm talking about
I
here
agree.
is that like the whole idea, pornography, being against patriarchy and still, viewing pornography and defending it as you know, as a freedom of speech is an oxymoron in
But I
itself,
don't I
I
don't
think,
defend
because
all pornography. I defend some elements of it, and I harshly criticize some elements of it as well.
what part of it do you criticize?
Oh, I mean, mainstream pornography is fucking
Oh,
disgusting.
definitely, yes.
I don't have
All that
anything.
incest and shit,
I
right?
don't have it. Oh, don't get me wrong. The incest, that's the best part. No, I don't have anything wrong intrinsically with anal sex, with kink, with throat fucking, with BDSM, or with any of the other broader uh, predilections that are engaged in there. But the way in which they engage in them, the context in which they're engaged in, and the frequency with which women are the subjects rather than the agents
Yes,
of those behaviors is, I could say the same of interracial porn, for example. I don't have anything
yes,
against interracial porn. I have something against an entire section, thousands of videos of tiny white women getting absolutely
yes.
fucking beefed by black dudes while she calls them, like the N-word. um,
Yeah,
so
that's just
I criticize that.
white insecurity, I think,
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, undeniably, it's all racist white people that are jerking off to that. And Godspeed to them. But when I think of like defending pornography, I'm trying to defend like its conceptual essence, like the idea of just one person and another person, camera, we make a video. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. What's wrong
Okay,
is the broader social predilections that have sort of infiltrated the
exactly.
system.
Uh, the problem is that how those images are being interpreted by people who watch it, it doesn't matter how the environment is that the pornography is being filmed on. The important thing is the things that it depicts actually affect men's and women's behavior towards themselves and towards the other sex. And pornography, I want to speak a little bit about pornography now and the history of pornography, actually. First of all, we had softcore pornography, which was like Playboy and Penthouse and those sorts of things. And then softcore pornography was like movies and shit. Like we had movies that depicted women and men fucking like vanilla, or at most one blowjob or something. Now we have like like a scenario for pornography that every single pornography has the same plot. First of all, woman is coerced somehow, and then she gets throat fucked, and then she gets she gets her vagina fucked, and then anally, and then the man comes on her face. So where did this come from? Actually, in 1990s there was this guy called, oh, I can't remember his name, but he started something called gonzo pornography, which was different from the pornography that came before it, uh, in which that by that gonzo pornography is actually like a documentary. So before that, in pornography, people were acting as, they were actors, they were acting as something, something, someone, someone. But after gonzo pornography, it became like, pornographers and the people in pornography, the women and the man in pornography, started playing themselves, not a character. They started playing themselves. So today, the mainstream pornography and the pornography that is so-called amateur pornography is gonzo pornography. And gonzo pornography, I remembered the guy's name, it's Max Hardcore. You can check him out later. Max Hardcore. Okay, so this guy started Gonzo Pornography. He founded it, and Gonzo. Okay, you take over from now because I'm kind of, and my mind is a little, you know,
Yeah,
what
so
do you say?
Max Hardcore is a wonderful name. Thank you for sharing it with us. I so the issue I have again is that I feel like we keep roping around the sort of the essential topic here. I'll never disagree that the porn industry is fucked. I mean, unquestionably. And I'll also never disagree that sex trafficking is fucked. And
Can I
also,
say something?
of course,
Okay, so if you think that the pornography industry is fucked, you should understand that all the amateur pornography, or the hentai, is completely based upon the value system of the mainstream pornography industry.
I don't agree with that. I think that amateur pornography and drawn pornography definitely have different, broader, like sort of attitudes towards sex than mainstream, like Brazzers pornography does.
But it's the basis of all those ideas came from gonzo pornography. You can look it up. You can
Well, I
you
mean,
can
like patriarchy is the basis of all pornography because patriarchy dictates the interactions between men and women, and most
yes.
pornography is affected by those gendered expectations. But I don't think that's an argument against the pornography. It's an argument against the patriarchy. As long as people exist, they're going to want to jerk off to pornography that's representative of their interests. We need to challenge those cultural predilections by, being feminist or being leftist or what have you. But I don't think that like attacking the concept of pornography or sex work really goes along with that, especially when there's an evident contradiction in some of the values that you have here. On one hand, you're talking about this like as a systemic problem of the pornographic industry being heavily influenced by patriarchy and everything else being sort of subsequent to that. But then you're also talking about how sex work isn't good because women are implicitly coerced through social expectation to be objectified for men. So we're not really using either a systemic or an individualistic approach. It feels like we're just kind of finding whatever excuses we can to critique every element of involvement with sex work. So, just as a purely yes or no, would you have an issue with a dude camming? Do you think there's anything like intrinsically harmful with that? If a dude cammed, if I cammed and I like jerked off or shoved stuff up my ass?
I actually, you know, a yes or no, you say?
Yeah. Do you think there would be anything problematic with that?
Well, it depends on your language, on the level of degradation, it
What
depends
would
on
be the
a lot of
distinguishing
things.
characteristics between it being okay and it not being okay?
Okay, so if you're just sitting there and jerking off, or if you're just sitting there and sticking things up your ass, then that's no problem for me. But if you're degrading yourself and you're humiliating yourself, and it's like if it is if it's doing a harm to you psychologically in the end of the day, then I wouldn't be okay with it.
What if I enjoyed degrading myself?
Well, if you enjoy degrading yourself, then well, that's another issue. Why would you enjoy degrading yourself in the first place?
People have gotten off to being degraded for thousands of years. I don't know what particular gene kicks it off, but it's definitely a thing a lot of people are into. Also, I'd say it's pretty degrading, by the way, to do most like retail work. In fact, I mean, I don't know, like being yelled at by a manager like 8 hours a day, having to do like pick up shit and like move inventory around and deal with customers. I feel like that has as much, if not more, potential for degradation and humiliation than any level of sex work or any amount of self degradation I'm consensually doing to make more money off my audience.
I absolutely agree that working in such an environment can be degrading as well. I actually am, against all kinds of hierarchies in our society, but it doesn't mean that sex work is any better than that.
Well, I mean, that's up for them to decide, right? If a sex worker enjoys the work that they do more than they would be doing retail, I know sex workers personally who have experienced retail and prefer sex work quite a bit. Even if they're degrading themselves on cam, I don't really know like how what they're doing is any more harmful. If anything, it's better. Self-employment, agency over their own work times, sense of empowerment, that sort of thing.
Yes, but we have to see through that. They can be self-employed or, earning money or whatever, but the ideas that they're spreading to younger generations is going to persist for centuries, and it's going to affect the lives of women and men. It's
What
never
ideas?
the idea that women degrading themselves is sexual, and violence against women are being sexualized in pornography, and it's not supposed to be okay, but we're acting like it's okay, we're ignoring it.
I mean, I'm not ignoring it, but I also don't think people should refrain from getting off to their kinks just because they're worried like a child might stumble onto their web feed and like get an idea or something, you know?
No, it's not just about children. Anybody could be affected by these ideas.
So people shouldn't practice sexual predilections that have a chance of reinforcing patriarchal ideas.
I think that there should be a limit to practicing, like we're in the age of the internet, right? So we have access to pornography like at high speed. The problem with that is that we always need, new content. We always need new sorts of, degradations, and, new sorts of faces and new sorts of women, and, all kinds of shit. And so we we don't get enough. And after some time of browsing these porn sites, you get desensitized to a lot of shit that shouldn't be okay. The first time you see
I
it,
don't disagree
you,
with any of this, but I still don't think that's an argument against people participating in pornography or sex work.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
I don't disagree with any of that, but I don't think it's an argument against participating in pornography and sex work. After all, there are tons of things, tons of addictions that you can fall into, especially with the accessibility of the internet. But normally, we don't blame the thing itself, we blame people's access to it, you know? With the exception of a few things, like, say, for example, cigarettes or alcohol, things that are chemically dependent, you know? There are tons of things that we can end up having an unhealthy addiction to. But, you know, you could say, like, for example, it used to be you just play Pong on an arcade machine, but now you can play League of Legends your whole life without ever sitting up from the computer. But you wouldn't want to ban League of Legends then. You'd want to, encourage parents to have their kids be more responsible with the consumption of games. I think we should be more responsible with our consumption of pornography.
Yes, I agree with that, but the point that I was trying to make was not about addiction. I do believe that pornography can lead to addiction and very, intense addiction at that. But the point that I was trying to make was that through being desensitized, get used to some acts that initially you thought were very oppressive and wrong to do to someone, and
Like
as you
what?
watch them. Oh, sorry.
Like what?
Like, I don't know, like the first time you see a woman getting throat fucked, you might gag, but after watching it like 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, you start to enjoy it and you want to do it to a woman. This
Do you
is
think there's something wrong
desensitization.
with throat fucking?
I do actually, yes.
What?
Um, First of all, we have a vagina. What is it for? Like, why do people need to fuck our throats? It's painful, it's I don't know. It's my personal opinion. People can like throat fucking for all I care, but
Well,
I
quite
don't
quite a
like the
few
idea
people,
of it.
at least in my experience, do like throat fucking. I mean, it's very different to having vaginal sex. Same with anal sex. It's all about diversifying the experiences we can have in the bedroom, right?
I think it's kind of degrading.
Well, some people like degrading things, but it doesn't have to necessarily be degrading.
Well, you said that some people like degrading things. So, it used to be in our society, people who watch pornography or read pornography for that, were ashamed of their what do you say, for their habits. But today, people who don't watch pornography and just don't like the ideas of throat fucking or anal, they are the ones getting called prudes, and they are the ones getting ashamed of their ideas.
I mean, I agree. I don't think you should like shame people for not wanting to have their ass fucked or having their throat fucked or anything. I
Yes,
will say
but that's the culture.
I do think that in this day and age, it is a little weird if you're not interested in having oral sex of any kind. I do think at that point that's been normalized to the extent that if I went on a date with somebody and they were like, "Oh, I don't suck dick," I might think that's a little bit weird. But uh, all the same, I mean, agree. I agree that desensitization is a thing, and I agree that sometimes people are shamed for being prudish when in reality they're just exercising their desires, same as anyone else. But I don't agree with any of that. I just think that pornography and sex work can be fine, and that sex work can often be an elevating and empowering way for a person to make some sweet change on the side, and that pornography is a great way to get your rocks off if you don't feel like using your imagination or somebody else's holes.
Okay, I actually want to respond to that, but before that, can my boyfriend ask you a question? He's with me right now, and you know, he asked me if he could ask you a question. So,
Yeah, real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Hey, Vaush.
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, I'm the boyfriend who discovered porn at the age of 4, and I overheard one of your arguments. I think it was about liking being degraded or something along those lines. Like, what if I like being degraded, for example, right?
Hmm.
So I think the problem with that is, for example, do you think being degraded inherently is bad or not?
Being degraded is
Being degraded, yeah.
not inherently, no.
Why is that?
Because I'm a consequentialist. I think that things are only bad insofar as their outcomes are bad. If you're being degraded consensually by a partner who you love and you're getting your rocks off to being degraded, that's fine. If you're being degraded because you're working like a slave wage job and you can barely make enough to afford medical insurance, that's not fine, you know?
Yeah, I can get that, but just to preface this, I'm not kink shaming anybody, and I don't think that having a kink or having a degradation kink is bad in itself. But if you like being degraded by your partner in a consensual environment and you think or you feel that there isn't any bad effect to this, let me ask you this. Okay, so do you think that a cigarette addict or an alcoholic is a good advocate for healthy drinking or healthy smoking? However stupid that sounds. Because yeah,
I mean, they can be because they've had a personal experience with that, particular vice. Yeah. If they're currently like unable to control themselves, probably not. But I do know there are people, like for example, at AA meetings, it's usually former alcoholics that are running the whole show because they've got they've got experience with that particular matter.
I see. Okay. Well, do you think that a person who likes being degraded would still like being degraded if they hadn't been around porn from an early age, for example?
I think there are a lot of reasons why a person can enjoy being degraded. Some people are just naturally submissive. I don't know if there is such a thing as naturally submissive, but some people just seem to lean that way. Some people are processing trauma in a way that they feel being degraded during sex sort of helps them actualize the feelings in a more controlled environment. And some people just really fucking get off to it. I imagine the people who just really get off to it have usually had their influence from pornography, but maybe even that's not the case. After all, people have had sexual predilections long before pornography was commonly available. I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
there might just be some folks are just into that sort of thing, you know?
But with the accessibility of porn, the thing is, people, especially young people, have been exposed to porn. And you know, porn, like, porn is very, very degrading. Like, the stuff in there is pretty fucking
No, no,
degrading. Like, people
I
have
agree.
been,
Mainstream
yeah,
pornography is mostly fucking disgusting. There are some
yeah.
studios that do slightly better jobs, but for the most of it, it's pretty fucking disgusting.
Yeah, and people have been growing up with this stuff from like the age of 4. And you know, a child can't differentiate between what's degrading and what isn't. They don't have that concept of degradation. They're just watching something that people are telling them isn't bad for them. Like, most of people's friends are going to support their porn addiction, you know? And I don't think that anybody who's growing up in a porn-filled environment is going to actually ask themselves whether this is healthy or not. So I think when a person has a fetish for degradation, which has been perpetuated by the porn they've been watching from an early age, I don't think that person is going to take a look at whether that fetish is actually harming them or not, whether they're actually processing that in a healthy way or not. I think it's a byproduct of the porn that they've been consuming from an early age.
Yeah, but you can't know whether or not any unhealthy predilection anyone has is a product of any given stimuli. Many people have many different vices, but I don't think it's fair to blame a broader system when you A, don't know whether or not a vice was caused by the existence of an exposure to that system, and B, when it's just one of many conceivable things people could possibly do that hurt themselves without knowing whether or not it's a product of another system. It just seems like abstract. I agree parents should do a good job of making sure their kids are looking at responsible materials. I agree that the porn industry as a whole is patriarchal and misogynistic and generally pretty gross, but I don't think that's an argument against the existence of pornography. I mean, pornography has existed for as long as people have been able to inscribe images on hard surfaces. It's
Okay, then let me get
obviously.
a bit more specific. Sorry, but for
Mhm.
example, the daddy kink, you know, like people wanting a daddy to, you know, make them their little girl or something along those lines. That's relatively recent, you know, this sugar daddy stuff. And I
I
think,
promise you, I'm well aware.
yeah, and that's gotten so popular recently, and I think that's fully because of the porn that's made it popular.
It's
Especially,
cheap porn at that.
yeah.
I'm not familiar with the etymological history of the daddy shit or where exactly it came about. I will say it is not
Hmm.
exactly my favorite porn kink fetish trend. But with that being said, fads are going to come and go. We don't know for sure whether or not it was a product of pornography, and we don't know whether or not it was going to happen without pornography, and we also can't get rid of pornography as it is. I just think the best and most effective ways that we can deal with these problems are by fighting sex trafficking, fighting irresponsible consumption of pornography, and fighting the patriarchal attitudes that are prevalent within pornography. But what are we advocating for here? Banning pornography altogether?
Of course, you can't ban pornography. I'm just asking whether you agree or disagree with the fact that porn is harmful to people as a whole and
Some porn
irresponsible.
is harmful.
Some porn, yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with the fact that there's porn that doesn't harm your mind and that isn't unhealthy to the mind, but it's really hard to find that when you're like a teenager or something, you know? Like the popular stuff is gonna find you eventually.
Well, sure, so we have to fix the popular stuff, but that's not an issue with pornography. That's an issue with bad pornography.
But bad pornography is the majority, the overwhelming majority, actually.
Right, but the issue can't be solved by banning all pornography. It could conceivably be solved by fixing some of the cultural issues that affect pornography.
Yeah,
Unless you
that's
have a
true.
different prescription, like banning all porn, but I don't know if that's any more tenable.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I just wanted to see where you stand, and I'm not actually going to contribute to this debate in any way, so I'm going to hand it back over to Zenobia. Thanks for your time.
Well, no, not at all. And I agree with most of the prescriptive assessments here. I just think there's a space where pornography is fine and helpful and not harmful, and that space should be encouraged because it helps people in certain respects. It also serves as a good example to the broader industry what can and should be done. Um, so yeah.
Just as a final note, I think that there are things that help people while harming more people at the same time. And just because something can help somebody doesn't mean that that same thing harming other people, more people at the same time, makes that thing inherently good, or that it should be, or that it should be described as good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm consequentialist in this respect. Like, just because harm is done and good is done doesn't mean the harm is made non-existent. I think that probably, if we took a look like as an aggregate, the porn industry probably does way more harm than it does good. But I wouldn't assign any like inherent moral value to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see. All right, thanks for your time.
No problem. Have a good one.
You too.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Okay, so I definitely completely missed what you were talking about. I went to take a piss.
No worries. So, what I was specifically asking to you was what sexual predilections are like people should people not engage in like pornographically?
First of all, we need to ditch the scenario of gonzo pornography that, didn't, it didn't disappear until this day. And I'm very, surprised at it because can't people see how destructive it is to women and men too? Because, like men's only job seems to be like having a huge dick and using it to be aggressive towards the women involved in the pornography. And
Would you mind not
that,
clicking whatever it is you're clicking?
oh, okay, sorry.
No worries. Please continue.
um and like the women being on her knees and waiting for the jizz to come, to be on her face. This sort of thing needs to go, I think. This is definitely not wholesome. It has absolutely no point at all, and it is just degrading,
I
and
think
it
the
just
point is to make people come, right?
reinforces patriarchal values. Yes.
Well, the point's to make people come, right? It seems to do a pretty good job of doing that, at least.
Yeah, because of desensitization.
Well, I mean, even if you haven't been desensitized, some people are just into huge dicks tearing open like holes and then nutting all over the face. I've
I would argue
I've never
that
been a fan of
not many
facials.
people.
I'm going up to
Oh,
bat for other people here.
okay.
What were you
Um,
saying?
I was saying that I don't believe that many people actually, get are born with that sort of big dick fetish or anything. Like the first time I watched
Hmm.
porn, it was actually like at the age of 11 or something, and I actually had nightmares for like 2 years after that. And I cried myself to sleep very often thinking about what I saw, and I definitely did not enjoy it. But after I
There are other pieces of media intended for adults that you could have watched as a child that would have led to that same reaction. porn is 18 plus, so are horror movies. I mean, that's hardly specific to porn. That's just,
Yeah,
it wasn't for you.
the thing is, I actually loved horror movies, and I read, scary stories or whatever. I did all the adult things that should have disturbed me, but the only thing that disturbed me was the porn.
But there are people who would have watched porn when they were younger who would have been scared by horror movies. I mean, you can go both directions with that. I know because I did that. I was watching porn back at 13, but I was a huge pussy when it came to horror movies for, God, quite a while. So the horror movies would give me nightmares. In fact, I think I actually had nightmares the first time I played the original Five Nights at Freddy's back when it came out. God, that really dates me, doesn't it? But all the same, porn didn't bother me at all. So I think that's just a matter of what you specifically are into, you know?
Yeah, it could be, because of gender, maybe.
I mean, I that's possible, but I know women who have also been into porn from a really young age. So, I mean, I don't want to get into like anecdote Andy territory here, but I don't think like porn isn't intended for very young people. If they're exposed to it, it's conceivable they can be made upset by it. Why are mommy and daddy wrestling on the bedspread? That sort of thing. I don't think that's an argument that it's inherently harmful, though.
Um, Porn is not intended for anybody, I think, like
Well,
not just
it's intended
children.
for me, right? I'm a 25-year-old dude. I think most porn's actually specifically made for me.
Yeah, that's true.
So wait, what if we tried to build a new porn? Let's be constructive here, okay? So people are
Okay.
always going to be finding something to jerk off to. Like if we don't have porn, we're just going to be jerking off to rocks that we arrange in a appropriately curvaceous manner, okay? So something needs to
Okay.
be done here. Um, Now let's say that we have done feminism, okay? We're working on it. We're
Okay.
currently trying to abolish the patriarchy, gender parity across the board, so on and so forth. And things aren't perfect in that regard, but efforts are being made. And now we're trying to make a new porn industry here, okay? What would that porn industry look like to you? What is an acceptable sort of media format that you think would do a good job of allowing for a diverse range of sexual interests, because not everyone just wants to get off to missionary vanilla sex,
Yes, of
while
course.
also ideally not leading to much social harm?
Okay. So this is very thought-provoking. So thanks for asking this. Um, So, first off, I want to start off by saying that I am against an industry that is a multi-million dollar industry that has many, that has huge power over, society and the way people think. I am against that, whether it be mass media or, any sort of thing that has quite a lot of power over people's minds. I am against that. So,
Wait, quick
um,
point. I just want to clarify. Do you think that is the case for all forms of media? Would you say the same about the comic or the movie industry or like television shows? Or is it specifically the sex industry that you think should have a minimal impact on
I
broader culture?
think it definitely includes movies and TV shows and news and everything,
Okay.
every sort of media. Okay. So since I've made that disclaimer, let me go on by saying that before porn, before any sort of visual stimuli, we as human beings jerked off or orgasm to our imagination, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I would like there to be a diverse range of. I mean, yeah, it can't all be like a vaginal missionary with the lights off, right?
No, it doesn't have to be missionary or anything. It's just, we used our imagination for, sexual stimuli.
Yeah, but I mean, the porn industry is still going to exist if we can make it.
Well, porn industry is not going anywhere. So,
Well,
yeah,
right. But I
you're
mean, like,
right.
how would you make that industry? Like, I agree that people should be able to jerk off to their imaginations. It's probably a pretty healthy thing to do.
I think that, I don't see any problem with masturbation, and people should masturbate, like that's totally fine. But, masturbation to porn is another issue. So, people should usually, if they can, if they have the imagination, they should use that imagination to jerk off or, You know, that's my opinion.
Right,
But
but what
if
about building the industry though? For those who want a big fucking big boobies or whatever jiggling on the screen in front of them,
well,
or whatever.
well, I'm thinking about it, and I really can't come up with a an industry that doesn't harm anyone in any way. So that's very difficult. But I can say that, cartoon, um, you know, cartoon type of pornography could work, maybe. I don't know.
What about
But,
IRL pornography?
IRL pornography is very tricky because the people it involves and the kind of acts that became sort of the, you know, what do you say? The almost like the protocol, like it needs to happen. We need to, start over completely from zero, you know. Um, and my conditions for the for the industry to persist would be not depicting any sort of misogyny, or or the opposite, any sort of femdom is harmful in my opinion to men, all
This is
those.
I think where the ultimate issue we're going to have is, though, power dynamics are a huge part of people's sexual interests. Femdom or maledom, like, I mean, people are going to be getting off to this whether or not we live in a patriarchy. It's
Yes,
just
this is a very big societal problem since
wait, but
we
how's it a
have
problem though?
historically. It is a problem because we have existed in a society that have been historically very oppressive to many sorts of people. So those people had no choice but to accept their situation, and to do that, they sexualized it. They made it
I agree,
acceptable.
but in an ideal, well, I don't agree with that because people have been acting out these kinks for literal millennia. But if we have a porn
Um,
industry, people are going to be getting off to their kinks, and people, and I guess a free market, will make content to, hold the interest of those who have those kinks. I just want to see this done, in an ethical way. So whether we like it or not, there are always going to be people who want to be like deep anal fucked and then have their throat fucked. Like that, it's just an inimical fact of life. And
ATM is disgusting.
I mean, I'll admit it's not exactly my favorite thing in the world, but people are going to be doing it whether we want them to or not. So,
It's very dangerous, actually. You can get a lot of
well,
diseases from ATM.
and that is their choice. Um, and people are going to find content that appeals to them in that respect. I just want to see this done ethically. When I think of an ethical porn industry, I think of like independent, like contractors doing sex work. I've seen this take prominence lately. There are like people on Twitter who are sex workers who will make videos and sell a limited number of them to fans, like $40. You get access to this 2-hour video of me fucking my friend or whatever. That seems pretty cool, I think. And there are also some like kink-friendly, more feminist porn studios today that I think could be a model for better
Oh,
ones in the future.
I know what you're talking about. Those feminist porns, they,
Not all of
depict,
them. Some of them are pretty crap, but some of them, it's
yeah, but,
ethical
you know,
sourcing for the
femi
pornography.
quote unquote, feminist porn isn't exactly any different from mainstream pornography as far as I know.
Right, but
It depicts
I'm
the
talking about
same
ideal
act.
pornography. Like if we made an
Okay,
ideal industry, because it sounds to me like you just want the industry abolished, and you just are
I actually
contending.
don't, you know, in a capitalist society, if we have porn, what's going to happen? This is going to happen because we have patriarchy and we have capitalism, and when those two get together, this type of porn, is the
Even
mainstream,
in a
and that is.
socialist society, all of the kinks you don't like to see would be in a porn industry in that society. I guarantee you. Even in a socialist America, 100 years from now, there is still going to be people doing crazy, like pissing in people's mouths and stuff. It's all coming home to roost.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because of the history of
I
pornography.
don't think there's any evidence to suggest that people wouldn't be acting out non-vanilla sexual kinks in a non-patriarchal society.
Well,
And even if it is sincerely a product of the patriarchy, the same thing could be said about every piece of media that currently exists. But you're not out there advocating that we abolish the movie industry or abolish books. Even though if I read books or watch movies, I'm going to get a concentrated dose of all of the same patriarchal horseshit, admittedly not nude, but still the same basic attitudes delivered to me on screen or on the page. But it's porn specifically that you are advocating against. And I agree it has issues, but I could say the same about those other forms of media. So
Yes, and I actually see the elements of patriarchy in movies and video games, and I am against that. But I'm not trying to abolish anything in the first place. I'm speaking up against porn because it is the most powerful and most obvious form of patriarchy in our society today.
it may well be the porn industry, it exists, but the concept of porn, if you're not advocating to abolish it, is something that's going to exist anyway, and we should probably have some sort of prescriptive judgments as to how it should look, you know?
Yeah, so you said that you are the ideal industry the ideal porn industry for you would be content creators selling their stuff and owning their business or whatever. So that's the economic sphere of it. But
I think the
I
kinks that are represented in pornography are a reflection of our culture. And if we don't like the fact that all porn is dominated by ATM and pissing and throat fucking, the best way we can solve that is by making our culture less misogynistic, not by trying to like,
exactly.
well, but I agree with that, but not by targeting the porn itself.
Yes, but if we don't target porn, it's gonna create more misogynists and more, internalized misogynistic women,
But you didn't come on
those.
here saying that like mainstream porn industry is bad. You came on here saying that porn is bad. So you're not targeting the harmful elements, you're targeting the industry in a way you're not targeting other industries.
Well, I'm inherently against, mainstream pornography, but I am against porn because porn, generally is modeled after mainstream pornography because mainstream pornography existed before all else.
But sure, but then that's just a matter of fixing the cultural predilections in the system. That's not an ideological opposition to the system itself, is it not?
Well, the system definitely needs fixing, but even if we fix the system itself, as long as pornography keeps being the pornography that it is today, the social problems that we have fixed will resurface.
Well, well, I mean, I think sure, insofar as the problems within pornography are a component of broader issues with patriarchy, but that's not an argument against porn as a concept. And when I asked you what would an ideal porn society look like, you couldn't really give me an answer, which makes me think that your issue isn't with the patriarchy exclusively, it's with porn itself. If you can't imagine a porn industry without patriarchy, your issue is with porn, not just the patriarchy. So I'm
Yeah,
trying
let
to
me be
ask,
honest.
what arguments are there against porn that don't invoke the existence of the patriarchal influence?
Yeah, let me be honest with you. I don't think that there can be a porn industry that isn't patriarchal.
Okay, that's
That's
what I
true.
thought. Yeah, that's what I thought. I strongly disagree with that.
Okay, so elaborate, please.
Why would I need to elaborate? Why would a porn industry need to rely on the existence of patriarchy? People want to get off. Women want to get off too, in all
Yes,
societies
but
throughout all time.
women are always secondary in these sorts of industries. So
In
men's.
all industries, women are secondary in all industries as it stands.
Yes, exactly. But the status quo of pornography is going to persist if we don't do anything to abolish it.
The same could be said. You said you didn't want to abolish pornography.
Yeah, I don't want to abolish pornography. I want to abolish the patriarchal elements in
But
pornography.
the same could be said about every other form of media, movies
Yes.
and books and what have you. Yes, but you're the one who can't imagine porn existing without patriarchy, and that's the issue here. I agree that
Yeah,
patriarchal
because
attitudes should be abolished from general media. I would never disagree with that.
yes, I'm just being truthful, frankly. You know, pornography in itself, it's just it's just
I feel like
depicting
I feel like you're
prostitutes.
bringing a lot of moralistic presuppositions to this argument that are based entirely on your personal experiences. Pornography is just that. It's just naked people. We've been nude. We were nude before
I
anything
wish it
else.
was just naked people. If it were
But
just naked
then
people,
people have
I
been
would have
fucking,
no
and
problem with
people have
it.
been sexually experimenting, and people have been watching other people sexually experimenting and jerking off to that for as long as we have been capable of
Yeah,
doing.
please just read some interviews of porn makers that,
This is
like
irrelevant to what we're talking about right now. We're talking about
how do
whether or
they
not porn
come
is
up with
intrinsically
how
patriarchal.
do they come up with all these themes and, kinks
I'm
and
aware of this.
how
Again, this is a whataboutism. We're not talking about the actual issue here, which is whether or not porn is inherently patriarchal. I think that's a ridiculous claim. Porn can't exist except in a society which doesn't value women. That seems like an unsupportable, erroneous, incredibly emotionally based claim. There's pornography out there that has nothing to do with women. For what reason does gay pornography exist if all pornography is centered around the dynamic between men and their oppression of women?
Okay, let me talk about gay
Well,
pornography.
just
Gay
so you know,
porno
it's gonna have to be done quickly because I do have to go soon.
Okay, okay. I will try to elaborate it as soon as possible, as quickly as possible. Okay, so in gay pornography, there is the typical dominant and submissive type of man, right?
Not
You know,
always,
the
but sometimes, yeah. I mean, usually
well,
someone's getting fucked and someone's fucking, but
yes, that's the image I have. So, usually the one who is doing the fucking is, acting, masculine and
I can't.
aggressive,
I
right?
strongly disagree with your highly reductivist sort of application of patriarchal influence onto every aspect of queer pornography. Lesbian porn is also made by lesbians for lesbians, likewise for gays.
Um, Actually, a lot of lesbian porn are being watched by men and men only, and a lot of lesbian porn isn't focused on women's pleasure and just, visual
I didn't
stimuli
say
for
all
men.
lesbian porn. I said some lesbian porn is made
Yeah,
by
but a
lesbians for lesbians.
very big majority
I
of
never
lesbian porn is
talked
made for
about the
men.
majority of lesbian porn. I'm saying that there is porn out there that does not have influence from the broader patriarchal perception of how men and women are supposed to interact.
Okay. Okay. So, to elaborate, I just want to say that, you know, an ideal porn industry is something we need to think about very later. After we have fixed the problem of patriarchy in pornography. After we fix that, we can think about the ideal porn industry. But right now, that won't help anything.
No, thinking about the ideal porn industry is how you build better examples and modify existing media towards something better. That would be like saying we don't need to work on producing feminist books and movies because we have to be too focused on abolishing the patriarchal influences of existing movies and books. No? I mean, you need better examples, do you not?
Well, I just think that, with the current state of pornography, and, pornography doesn't exist in a vacuum. It
I
influences
never
our
said it
culture.
does. I completely agree. And there is a strong problem with cultural elements within porn today, but I think we can fix that by fighting the patriarchy, and that porn is not inherently patriarchal or misogynistic. Porn's just porn. Porn will exist for as long as humans exist, whether we live in patriarchal, matriarchal, or gender neutral societies.
Well, I genuinely do not know if we can have an ideal porn industry anytime soon or ever for that matter.
I mean, we'll have to see. Just so you know, like reaching across the aisle here, I can understand the sort of presumed association between degradation and, say, for example, throat fucking. But
Yes.
I think it's entirely possible for stuff like that, and even more kinky stuff, to exist outside a broader social dynamic of exploitation and subjugation.
Yes, it can exist.
Yeah. I mean, if we can live in a world where throat fucking has nothing to do with patriarchal domination over women, I think we can live in a world where videos of throat fucking have nothing to do with such too.
Yes, I do believe so too. But the history of patriarchy in our society, and the exploitation of women in our society, there is a big role that it plays in our lives. When we see that the things that it indicates, like it is very demoralizing to many people. So you don't want to see throat fucking when you live in a patriarchal society. It just demoralizes you. If you lived in a egalitarian society, then maybe it wouldn't bother you as much. But right now, it is very, very demoralizing.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I think the same could be said about a traditional romance movie. If you're like a feminist lady, and you watch like a fucking traditional rom-com or something, that shit's
Oh,
probably going to be just as
yeah.
toxic, if not worse. Well, then yeah, it's a broader cultural thing. Porn is just another industry that's a victim of broader cultural problems. I don't think
Yes.
there's anything intrinsically wrong with it. And we didn't even get into like drawn stuff or erotica, but
Maybe
erotica
next
is
time.
packed with incest though, so there's that. Um,
Yes.
Whatever the case may
Um,
be, I should have head off a little while ago, but I appreciate the discussion. Thank you for coming on.
oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right.
I'm sorry. This was actually my first time. So.
Well, don't worry about it. Please enjoy the Discord and have yourself a good one, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.